There's a question I've been sitting with for a while now. Not a loud question, but a quiet one. Am I actually seeing the world clearly? Or am I just seeing what I want to see? That question is what drew me straight into The Scout Mindset by Julia Galef. In this book, Galef explores the difference between the scout mindset and the soldier mindset, two ways our minds approach truth, belief, and good judgment. One searches for reality, the other defends what it already believes. And the more I reflected on that idea, the more unsettling it became. Because deep down, I started wondering whether much of my thinking had really been a form of motivated reasoning all along. I'll be honest. When I first saw the title, I expected something closer to another productivity or decision-making book. The kind that gives you a framework, a handful of bullet points, and then sends you on your way feeling slightly more organized than before. But what I found inside The Scout Mindset was something far more personal, and honestly, far more confronting. Julia Galef introduces a distinction that stopped me cold: the difference between the scout mindset and the soldier mindset. The soldier, she explains, fights to defend what they already believe. Their reasoning isn't really about discovering truth. It's about winning. Evidence becomes ammunition, ideas become enemies, arguments become battles. And the more I sat with that metaphor, the more I recognized it everywhere. I recognized it in debates I've had, in opinions I've defended too quickly, in moments where I thought I was being rational, when in reality I was simply protecting a belief that already felt comfortable. The scout, by contrast, wants something entirely different. The scout wants to know what's actually out there, not to defend a position, but to map reality as accurately as possible, even when the terrain turns out to be uncomfortable, even when the map shows that you were wrong. What surprised me most was Galef's argument that this isn't really about intelligence. In fact, she suggests that smarter people are often better at motivated reasoning. They're more skilled at building clever arguments to defend the beliefs they already hold. That idea landed like a quiet gut punch for me, because it means clear thinking isn't just about thinking harder, it's about thinking differently. And from that moment, the book opened up into something I genuinely wasn't expecting. One of the ideas that shifted something real in me was Galef's exploration of motivated reasoning, the way our minds quietly work backwards from the conclusion we already want to reach. Instead of asking what's true, we ask how we can justify what we already believe. To illustrate this, she tells the story of the Dreyfus Affair, a political scandal in 19th century France. A Jewish army officer named Alfred Dreyfus was accused of treason and convicted with extremely weak evidence. The people responsible for the investigation weren't unintelligent. They weren't cartoon villains. They genuinely believed they were defending the truth. But their beliefs, their loyalties, and their assumptions had already shaped the outcome before the evidence was even examined. What makes this story powerful is how familiar it feels. The same psychological patterns show up everywhere, in politics, in sports, in workplace disagreements, even in the small misunderstandings we have with people we care about. The more I reflected on it, the clearer it became that cognitive bias isn't something that happens to other people. It's something all of us carry. Our minds are constantly filtering information in ways that protect our identity, our beliefs, and our sense of being right. Galef describes this as identity protective cognition, the moment when changing your mind begins to feel like losing part of yourself. And if I'm honest, that hit close to home. I think we've all felt that tension before. The moment when admitting we might be wrong feels strangely uncomfortable, even threatening. But this is where the book becomes genuinely empowering. Instead of framing intellectual humility as weakness, Galef reframes it as strength. The willingness to say, "I might be wrong," isn't indecision. It's a sign of someone who cares deeply about accurate thinking and good judgment. She introduces the idea of being well-calibrated, holding beliefs with exactly the amount of confidence the evidence deserves. Not more, not less. Another concept that stayed with me is something she calls a pre-mortem. Instead of imagining how a plan will succeed, you imagine that it has already failed, and then you ask yourself why. At first it sounds pessimistic, but what it actually does is open your mind to possibilities you might otherwise ignore. The more I sat with these ideas, the more I realized that the scout mindset isn't just about intellectual debates or philosophical discussions. It's about everyday life. It's about how we interpret feedback at work, how we approach difficult conversations, how we respond when reality doesn't match our expectations. And perhaps most importantly, it's about how we handle being wrong. Most of us instinctively treat changing our minds as embarrassing, almost like a public defeat. But Galef reframes it in a completely different way. Updating your beliefs when new evidence appears isn't a failure of thinking. It's the very purpose of thinking. Reading that gave me an unexpected sense of relief. It felt like permission to approach ideas with curiosity instead of defensiveness. To treat uncertainty not as weakness, but as part of honest reasoning. Throughout the book, Galef's voice is warm, thoughtful, and deeply grounded. She draws from psychology, philosophy, history, and her own experience as co-founder of the Center for Applied Rationality. But she never speaks from a pedestal. It feels more like a conversation, the kind that gently challenges you while still making you feel understood. And by the time I finished the book, what stayed with me most wasn't a specific technique or framework. It was a shift in perspective, a quiet reminder that how we think matters more than what we think. Imagine approaching a disagreement not with the goal of winning, but with the goal of understanding. Imagine holding an opinion while genuinely asking yourself what evidence might change your mind. Imagine building a life and a sense of self, not on the fragile foundation of always being right, but on the much stronger one of always being willing to look more closely. That's what the Scout Mindset by Julia Galef quietly invites us to do: to trade certainty for curiosity, to replace defensiveness with discovery, and to approach the world not as soldiers guarding beliefs, but as scouts searching for truth. And the more I think about it, the more valuable that mindset feels in a world where information is everywhere. Opinions are loud, and certainty is often rewarded more than honesty. If you're someone who wants to think more clearly, reason more honestly, and make better decisions, this book is absolutely worth your time. It's the kind of book that doesn't just give you ideas, it gives you a different way of looking at your own mind. Like and subscribe for more book breakdowns and mindset insights. This is Well Read Club, where we explore ideas that help us think better and live wiser.